Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out and writing with me this morning. I'm so happy to see so many of you here, and I'm really excited to get some work done this morning because I have finally finished my outline for draft 3 of the book that I'm working on right now. And today is the day that I actually get to start writing it. So I'm really excited to kind of like start in chapter 1 and completely like start draft 3 in earnest. So this is a very exciting day. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy that you are here. Hi, Micah. Thank you so much for coming and writing with us. Hello, Demonic Emperor. Glad you could make it. Hello, Streameros. Hello. Thank you so much for coming and writing with us. Hi, Piper. I'm so happy you could make it. Oh, I'm so happy that we're all going to be super productive and have a bit of a writing group this morning. What are you all going to be working on? I just told you what I'm going to be working on. I'm so excited. I don't know if I'll be able to talk for very long at the beginning of this live stream just because I'm so excited to get started working on this new draft. So I have my coffee, I have my water, I have snacks. I'm all ready to like really buckle down and start working on this book today. I am finally like, I don't know, I was going through, I don't know if you also do this with books and projects that you're working on. Like, I always go through love-hate cycles with books that I'm working on. Like, I will really, really love it when I'm drafting. And then as soon as I have to like kind of enter the second draft stage, I'll start getting kind of worried about it and really in my head and then hate it a little bit more. And then as soon as I get feedback back on draft 2, I start loving it again. So it cycles, but I'm like entering a love cycle or like the love part of this love-hate cycle right now. So that's very exciting. Hi, Renee. Thank you so much for coming. Hello, Hayden. I'll be doing productivity rather than writing sprints today. Got to clean this room up and then do some dishes. Very relatable. Yeah, no, everybody, whether you're doing writing or productivity, just whatever you would like to be doing, just, everything is productive. There are things like I should really honestly be doing that too, especially, since it's Saturday. I've been putting off a couple of things around the house this week that I need to get to doing, but I'm going to do that as soon as the sprints are over so I can dive into this draft. But yes, no, good luck with productivity stuff. That's awesome. All right, are we ready to maybe like just full on? I know that we haven't been chatting for very long, but do we just want to jump into our first sprint? I am kind of excited to get started today. What are we feeling? Do we want to do a 20-minute sprint or we can start with 15? Hayden, I'm curious, what times work best for you if you're doing productivity? Like, do you like shorter or longer sprints? What's the best setup for that? Because I know for writing, like it's a little different than productivity, but if we can find like a happy medium between like productivity and writing, we can absolutely adjust times and stuff. All right, yes, Renee would like to do sprints. Let's do a sprint. Okay, I'm gonna set up the timer now. Maybe we start with 15 minutes and then, I mean, usually the first sprint that I do in these is always 15 minutes and then we can go longer after that or stick to that time. All right, cool. So I'm gonna share my screen. And I'm gonna share the tab audio so that everybody can hear it. Alrighty. Cool. Oh, quickly before we get started, Hayden said, I'm actually not sure. The longer I go, the harder it is to stop. So take that as you will. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I'll get into a groove when I'm doing house stuff and dishes where I just like want to just get it all done in one go. So, okay, I will try to figure out how to incorporate that in our timing. All right, awesome. Happy writing and productivity, everybody. I will see you all in 15 minutes. All right. How was that sprint for everybody? How did you get what you wanted to get done? I personally just kind of went through my first chapter and kind of consolidated a bunch of I'm trying to remember because I have a critique group that I also am a part of. So I have comments from them on the first chapters. And then I also have comments from my editor and comments that I made for myself. So I'm trying to kind of consolidate everything and just like see if my first chapter actually is already kind of solid or if I need to work on it some more. So I always feel like the first sprint, I just kind of am a little bit tired and groggy and I need to collect my thoughts. And once the second sprint starts, I'm actually able to really start getting some work done. Oh, we had some new people join us during that sprint. Hi, Glenn. Thank you so much for coming. We are doing writing sprints. So we all gather together on this stream and I set timers. And for that time, we just write or do different productivity things. And like for that time, we just focus on doing what we want to do and what is productive for us during our days. And then after the sprint ends, we just chat about it and then we do some more. So this is more like how we're going to get a lot of work done. I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah, that's what we're doing. Renee got 413 words. That's amazing. That is way better than what I usually get for my first sprints. I really don't I always need to warm up before actually being able to write. Usually my first sprints are maybe 100, 200 words if I'm really trying to write, because most of it's just like consolidating outlines and stuff. I really I can write fast in some sprints, but I'm also I've found that I feel a lot better about what I'm writing when I write a little slower. So I'm not really forcing myself to try to write super quickly anymore. I have reframed that in my brain because I think that it's better to write stuff that you're proud of, and that you can feel good, because if I tried to push myself too hard to write 10,000 words, I'd feel a little bit icky because I wouldn't feel like those 10,000 words were my best words. So, no, you're doing way better than me on this first sprint. Hayden said, I started filling a trash bag. My room now looks dirtier than it did before, but that's cleaning things out for you. Yeah, it's definitely part of the cleaning process. Piper, oh, thank you so much, Piper. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Glenn said, sounds great for productivity. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's a great way to get stuff done because you get a little break and then you get to really focus, and I don't know, works for me. Awesome. I'm so glad. Nice. Were those missing for a long time? How long were your flip-flops missing? Piper said, I got 31,868 words. For a second, I thought that you meant during this sprint. I was a little shook. I think I'm going to cut my book short to 100 chapters. Yeah, I know we talked about this last time we did a sprint. I still can't believe you have that many chapters, but that still sounds like a long book. How many chapters do you have right now at 31,000 words? I'm curious. All right. I will see. Oh, there is something that I wanted to share with you actually that I was thinking about during this last sprint, is that I recently watched or listened to this podcast. It was kind of like a taped talk by this woman who is amazing. I think her name is Jennifer Barnes. She did a talk at the Romance Writers of America, I think in 2018, and she talked about writing for your id and presented her theory of fiction, because a lot of I'm going to butcher this a little bit because I haven't rehearsed pitching this in my head, but she has a theory of best-selling fiction, and this books that do really, really well are the books that are able to tap into different things that humans find pleasurable. And there are a couple of universal pleasures that people really gravitate toward, and that all of the big crazy breakout bestsellers like Hunger Games and Twilight and all these things all are able to kind of speak to those universal pleasures. And that fiction really, the ones that do, this isn't a stead, because there are a lot of other things that go into it, like the marketing budget and how it's published and whatever, but the fiction that does really well usually is able to deliver the most pleasure to readers. And some of the pleasures that she mentioned in the talk were things like beauty and power and wealth and touch and all these things that kind of just speak to people's ids, I think she used it as the psychology term, the Freudian part of your brain that is very pleasure driven. I haven't taken a psych class in a very long time. And then at the end of the talk, she talked about how, like, while humans have all of these ids that they gravitate toward, you also can have ids that you yourself, like, just things, ids, like, things that your id gravitates towards just for no reason, and that you can, like, start building lists of things that, like, if you're watching a movie or reading a book and there's a part of it that you just, like, are absolutely drawn to that you love, or like tropes that you absolutely love, you can start writing them down on lists. And she calls her list her id list, and then when she's writing fiction, she can take the things on her id list and incorporate it into different scenes and stuff that she's writing. So I've been thinking a lot about that. I will link, or I'll drop the link to this talk in the chat after, like, once we start our next sprint. But I've been thinking a lot about, like, the id lists recently, and I have been thinking about it in terms of, like, framing different chapters of my book. Like, how can I deliver the most pleasures through this chapter, and, like, how can I incorporate all of the tropes that I love, or, like, speak to these kind of universal like, human pleasures. She mentioned that, like, competition in games was a big one, which is why, like, you see a lot of or and danger too. So, like, there are a lot of books that will combine the danger with the competitions, like the Hunger Games or Squid Game and stuff like that. And that's why, like, a lot of people are just drawn to that. I don't know, I thought it was a really, really cool talk. So I one thing that I will share with you today is, I mean, also, if I'm talking about this and you think of anything where you're like, oh wow, yeah, this kind of makes, like, this is something that I would put on my id list, something that just, like, I absolutely love seeing in stories, drop it in the comments, because I'm, like, trying to ask people what would be on their id list, because I'm, also just very, very curious, because I have, like, tropes that I love and stuff, but I find it so interesting to hear what other people like, because everybody's a little bit different. Like, some people really love it, like, just for whatever reason. Um, when, like, characters get ice cream in their books, or people like, dramatic dinner parties where someone storms out of the room, or people like scenes on rooftops, or people like, enemies to lovers, or, all these sort of things. So yeah, if you have any, like, tropes that you are absolutely in love with, drop them in the comments, because I'm curious. And yeah, I've started building my id list and am very, very excited about, like, thinking about fiction through the prism of pleasure and how much pleasure it can deliver, instead of, like, anything else. Like, because, stories are something that we do, like, we write and we read for fun a lot of the time. So I don't know, it should deliver as much pleasure as possible. um all right. So Glenn said, I'm new to writing, been kind of in a character creation loop for the last 3 months. Well, I mean, it's important to do all of that outlining and planning and character creation a lot of the times before you start writing too. It's always helpful to kind of have an idea so that you don't have to write something and then stop and then go back and do character work. So having, like, a plan up front is also a lot of the times very helpful. Hayden said, yes, several weeks. I've been looking for these because it's the South, and even just a couple of days ago, it was 65 plus, but now it's freezing outside, so I don't need them anymore. Yeah, it is freezing outside in the Northeast. It's definitely not flip-flop weather over here. Hayden said, I've also found 5 books I've been meaning to read. Oh, what books? Let us know. I'm curious. Piper said, what happened so far in my book is Bethany reads the Cowhead story, a story that's so scary you're supposed to die from fright of reading it. I read it before and I'm fine. Wow, that is scary. Is this a real story, or is this a story that you wrote, like a story within your story? Hi, Arvstika. Thank you so much for coming to the sprints. Um, you said, I think Sigmund Freud talked about the id too. Yeah, I think that Jennifer Barnes used the word id because it was a Freudian term. I don't know. I remember learning about Freud in high school. I don't remember exactly what the definition of the id was and how different Jennifer Barnes's interpretation of the id is. But yeah, that's definitely where the term came from that she was using. Yeah, exactly. So it is the ego. So it's, like, the thing that people just, like, love, for, like, that their egos love, that, like, people are just, like, drawn to, um, and, maybe somewhat irrationally or subconsciously, like, we just like these things as humans. Um, Hayden said, I'm fond of enemies to lovers and lovers to enemies. Harder to find the second one in my experience. Yeah, well, I think it's easier to find the second one in real life, maybe not so much in stories. I actually don't like enemies to lovers. That's kind of my like hot take on young adult books. So many people love enemies to lovers, but I really, really don't. It just doesn't do it for me. I don't know. I like friends to lovers more. Piper said, "My favorite trope is not knowing whether the villain is dead or not." Yes. A lot of people don't like this where it's or like I think maybe not like the not knowing whether the villain is dead or not, but I think a lot of people don't like it when the villain supposedly dies and then comes back to life. Or it's like when the villain should be dead, but like surprise, they're actually not dead. I think a lot of people don't like that, but I like that. I love that. I think that that's so cool. I don't know if you've seen Fear Street. All of the movies Fear Street, but I watched all the Fear Street movies over the summer, and there was a really effective, like, moment of this that really got to me. It was so scary. And yeah, I was, like, screaming at my computer while I was watching the movie, like, "Get out of there!" Glenn said, "Yeah, I feel like I can't start writing before the main character's background feels solid to me." You kinda need to know who they are as people before you start trying to, like, tell their stories. Because if you don't really understand who they are as people, it can get a little confusing and their motivations might not feel right. Hayden said, "We Are Indivisible" by Leah Greenberg, The Eternal City by Paula Morris, The Rules of Love and Grammar by Mary Simses, and Living History by Hillary Clinton. Nice. Oh, and a Nancy Reagan biography. Very cool. Yeah, I haven't read any of those. I read like mostly young adult fiction right now because I honestly have not been finding too much time to read, and I try to keep on top of YA and what's happening in YA, just because that's what I write. But I need to read a little bit more broadly. I love it when the villain has made everyone think he's dead, but he's just pulling strings in the background. Yeah, me too. Me too. I think that that's really, really effective. Yeah, it's scary, like, all these kinda, like, the villain thriller tropes, like, there's a lot of potential for danger and fear in that. Renee said, "I just throw my characters into the fire, plot, and see how they do to find out who they are." Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, that's another way, like, it's, definitely another way that you can do it. I just, like, I always feel I don't know, if I don't do character work up front, I will get, like, weird gut feelings as I'm writing where I'll just feel like, I don't like I don't feel good about it. I don't know, I just, like, I for whatever reason, if I don't like, if I have a weird gut feeling, if I'm, like, weirdly uncertain about what I'm writing, it stops being fun for me. But it also stops being fun if I outline too much, because then everything is boring because I know what's gonna happen. Hayden said, "I've been so focused on books for my Brit Lit class, but now it's time for a break, so I've started Brightly Burning by Alexa Dunn, the first YA romance I've read in a while." Oh, very nice. Yeah, I have, The Ivies by Alexa Dunn on my TBR, so I haven't I own it, I have a copy, I pre-ordered it, but I haven't gotten around to reading it yet because I am the world's slowest reader, and it's really embarrassing. Um, but yeah, no, I'm very excited to read it because I follow her YouTube channel and think she's incredible and really definitely wanna read it because 'cause I've heard her talk so much about that book. All right, so how are we feeling about doing our next sprint? I think we should go longer this time. I was really, like, starting to get into the groove when we stopped our last one. How do we feel about 25 minutes? I think that we will do 25 minutes unless there are any objections. So if there are objections, speak now because I'm setting the timer, and I will share my screen. Cool. All right. So I will see you all in 25 minutes. Happy writing and productivity. All right. That sprint went by so fast. I was not expecting it to end right there. How was that for all of you? Was that productive? Was it not productive? It was pretty productive for me. I finished kind of going through my edits for chapter 1, and now I'm moving on to chapter 2, which is, like, in pretty good shape. I don't know, I have, like, an outline of things that I made myself after going through my edit letter, and I redid my entire outline, and I wrote everything that I wanted to have happen in chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3. So I have to make sure that my chapters align to the outline that I created. And I think that I added a couple of little things in the outlining stage that aren't in the chapter right now. So I'm just going through and trying to remember whether I actually said the things that I thought that I did that are going to become important later on. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's going well. I am excited about this story now. I am excited that it actually has a strong arc, and I'm excited that I think readers who enjoyed book 1 are gonna like what I did in book 2, because it incorporates a lot of, like, I don't know, stuff that they requested in their reviews, like more particular characters and stuff, so that's exciting. Renee said only 310 words, but I had to figure out something sciencey. Oh, yeah. Research chapters are tough. Like, it's so easy when you're writing a chapter and you run into an issue or something that, like, your character might know, but you don't know. And then you have to, like, spend 20 minutes trying to figure out how it would actually work. Yeah, it's tough. I feel ya. Um, Hayden's egg closet is done. Bookshelf is done. Halfway through my desk and dresser. Wow, nice. Very cool. It sounds like you're being extremely productive during these sprints. Media attorney. Hello, media attorney. Thank you so much for coming and sprinting with us this morning. 523 words. I need to stop editing as I go. I absolutely feel you. Yeah. I also have a similar problem. I really need to, like, force myself not to edit as I go while still, like, writing slowly enough that I can be proud of what I've written, because otherwise I'll, like, feel bad about it and not feel like I've been really productive. So yeah, well, I mean, also, but 523 words is a lot of words to be getting in a sprint, when you're editing as you go too. Ervil Gore, yeah, of course you can ask something. Just comment whatever you wanna ask. Piper said, "Do you write poems?" Okay, so I have a bit of a complicated relationship with poems. I don't write poems. I took a poetry class. I took, like, my pre-orientation at college, we wrote a lot of poetry, and so that was, like, my first dabble into poetry, and I was like, "I don't like this at all." I just, like, feel like I'm trying too hard to be artistic, and it doesn't come naturally to me. And then I took a poetry class my senior year of college, and I really, like, tried, because I decided that I wanted to take a poetry class through the prism of fiction and, like, learn how to use words in more creative ways in order to, like, help my prose develop, because I think that poetry is really good for that, but I kept getting the feedback from my professor that my poems were too literal, and so I don't know, I don't think that I have a knack for, like, really, like, out there artistic poetry. I do write poetry, or I have written poetry, but it's always been extremely literal. Like, it's pretty clear and straightforward, so and which is kinda similar to my prose writing style. Like, I don't do, like, crazy, crazy arty stuff. I just, like, try to keep my prose as simple as possible so that, like, it doesn't take you out of the story, and it can, like, bring you into the story as easily as possible. I've tried to work hard at making my prose, like, really blend into the background as much as possible so that people don't really have to, like, realize that they're reading prose, if that makes sense. Like, they could just focus on the story. Do you write poems? I'm always, I love reading poems, and I love hearing, people talk about the poems that they're writing and things that they learn from writing poetry. Oh, whenever I write poems, they always turn out gorier than I intend. I even made one called Peter, Peter, People Eater. Wow. Yeah, I didn't have that problem with poetry. They didn't end up being gory. They, like, mostly ended up being, because, like, my professor would give us prompts to work with every week. And I remember there was one that was like, take an inanimate object and, like, describe it in a way that's, like, kind of unique and different. I think there was one example that she gave us. It was like a poem about a fork, and it was like somebody describing the fork in all sorts of, like, weird ways and, like, turning the fork into things that it wasn't literally. Um, So I remember looking around the room and seeing a baseball hat in my room when I was trying to work on this assignment, and I was sitting there trying to write a poem about it, and the poem ended up going something like, if you turn it upside down, it turns into a bowl. Like, it wasn't a very exciting poem. Or it was like, or if you squint, it kind of looks like a turtle. Like, it wasn't like a profound arty poem. So yeah, I don't have gory issues. I have boring issues. Hayden says, I'm also getting some podcast listening done, currently catching up on History Daily, currently on December 8th. Nice. Very cool. Yeah, I have a bunch of podcasts that I listen to as I do stuff around the house. Most of them are writing and marketing related. I love the podcast Six Figure Authors. I just love all of the hosts, and I listen to that show religiously and think it's fantastic. I also have been currently watching the playback recordings of some of the sessions that they did at the 20 Books to 50K conference back in November, because they record them and put them on YouTube. So I've been watching those as podcasts as I've been doing stuff. I also love the podcast You're Wrong About. I don't know if you also like, or anybody, who's here likes that podcast, but I was super excited to see one of the authors that I interviewed on my channel actually a couple of weeks ago just did an episode being interviewed on You're Wrong About. So that was really, really cool. But that's a fantastic podcast that I highly recommend to literally everybody. Hayden said, poetry doesn't have to be metaphorical. I feel like a lot of teachers make out poetry to have to be 100% allegorical all the time. Yeah, I think poetry, there's it's a very vague definition. Like, you can really call whatever you want to, some extent poetry. So I still call what I was writing poetry. And I was pretty proud of some of the poems that I did. But I don't really gravitate toward writing poems. And I definitely do not write songs. I stay away from that. My brother is very talented at doing that, but I cannot write songs. Are you a creepypasta author? I actually don't know what creepypasta is. I think that isn't it like some sort of YouTube channel that like shares horror stuff? I don't know what it means to be a creepypasta author, so no is what I'm gonna go with. But I'd love to hear more about it, because that sounds like if it is a YouTube like horror thing, it sounds like it could be up my alley. Media attorney said, "What was the name of that podcast?" I think You're Wrong About. It's the hosts are Mike and Sarah, although I'm pretty sure, or I mean, I'm absolutely sure Mike has stopped doing the show. They are fantastic. They will take people in history, or like people that they think have been misrepresented by the media, or like have a reputation that is, maybe unearned, and they will like actually break it down and show you what really happened to them and kind of give a more clear picture on who that person was and why they got that reputation and what actually happened and what the truth was. So it's like, you are wrong about like XYZ, and I think it's pretty cool. It's a great podcast. And then the other one I mentioned was Six Figure Authors, which is like more of a self-published book marketing podcast. Oh, they're spooky short stories. Oh, okay, cool. So is it like a YouTube channel where authors will like read spooky short stories that they write, and then it will like go on YouTube? Ervil Gore asked, I want to ask about scene transaction in my crime mystery book. Lots of the characters are playing major roles in their own way, and I'm changing 2 to 3 scenes in between every chapter. And it's going good, but what's your point of view about scene transaction and how to do that smoothly? Okay, so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you're asking about like transitions between scenes and like how focusing on different characters for different amounts of time in your book. I also do this in my mystery books. I have in the book I'm working on right now, I have 3 point of view characters. And I transition between their point of views by only choosing scenes that like have to be told from their points of view to be told through their points of view, so it flows naturally. Like, if there is one clue that the readers need to know at this particular point in the book, I will choose that character to be the one who shares that information or be narrating that scene. I'm not entirely sure what you mean about changing 2 to 3 scenes in between every chapter. Um, yeah, I think that making sure that, like, transitions between scenes, like, at the end of every scene, you have a push into the next scene, like, either a question or something that they find out that they, like, have to examine more in the next chapter. Um, yeah, like, some sort of reason to keep turning the pages at the end of every chapter, like a mini cliffhanger that makes people want to continue on to the next chapter. I hope that that helped. If that didn't answer your question, let me know in the comments, and I will take another stab at it. Yes, I love six-figure authors. Joe, Lindsay, and Andrea are all amazing, and I just love listening to them have conversations about marketing. It's very, very entertaining and so helpful. Like, there are so many episodes where I've just had to listen to it a couple of times, and, like, the first time to, like, take in the information and then the second time to take notes. Um, but yeah, they're wonderful. All right, so how are we feeling about doing another sprint? I think maybe I'm honestly, how do you feel about bumping it up to 30 minutes this time? I really want to dive deep into this chapter, and, like, I think because I'm in the editing headspace, I am gravitating towards longer sprints. But if you want to keep it like at 25, 20 minutes, let me know. I'm super happy to do that too. Piper said, "Do you write in a notebook? I have a notebook full of horror stories I want to put in a book one day." I don't write in a notebook. I will, like, take notes in, like, the notes feature on my computer, or I will have Word documents just dedicated to ideas that I have, or, like, little random ideas that I have, and I'll add it to the Word document, but I don't have a physical notebook. I like having everything on my computer so that I can access it whenever I'm working, instead of having to, like, go and get my notebook. Yeah, I do like the idea of writing in a notebook, but every time I've tried to do that, it hasn't gone super well. I tried to journal and, like, keep a diary in college, but I would never feel the need to write in it unless I was, like, experiencing something very intense. So I would call it my intense feelings journal because the only entries were either when I was, like, intensely upset or, like, intensely happy, and there was nothing ever in between. So yeah, I my intense feeling journal got filled up in college. Then after I graduated, I haven't really needed to open it back up again. But it's a nice time capsule. It makes me seem like a very, very all over the place person reading it just one entry after the other. All right. So yes, 30 minutes sounds good. Perfect. Let's do 30 minutes. I will share my screen, or I actually think I have to update the timer before I share my screen. I'm gonna mix up the sound. I don't think I'm sharing my screen yet, so I think I can surprise you all with the sound that's gonna play, because that would be entertaining. I'm gonna pick one that I haven't heard yet before. Um, all right, let's try this one. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. And happy writing, everybody. I will see you after this sprint. I think that that's my favorite timer sound yet. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that that might be the new staple on this channel. It feels so triumphant, like with the horns going off and everything. I'm a big fan. I don't know if you are also a big fan. If you guys are a big fan, let me know. How was that for all of you? That was a really good sprint for me. I am now in Yes, Media Attorney. I'm glad that you also liked it. That is, I'm like, I'm not even kidding. That is my new favorite timer sound. I've never gotten so much joy out of a timer sound before. No, it was not part of your podcast. That was the sprint sound ending, or the timer sound signaling the end of the sprint. Yes. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Mom. I did. It is. It was pretty spooky, but yeah, I think that because I write thrillers and kind of spooky stuff, I think that, being a little bit scared at the end of the sprints is kind of on brand for this channel. How is that sprint for all of you? Were you productive? How many words did you get? I am feeling very good about what I did. I'm editing chapter 4 now. Chapters 2 and 3 were already like in pretty decent shape. I didn't have to do very much to them, but chapter 4 needs a lot of work. Really starting at chapter 4 is when I'm going to have to be doing a lot more subplot integration. I have about 3 new subplots that I'm going to be adding into this book to replace ones that I have deleted, that I've decided that are really not that important. So I have a lot of new material that I'm going to have to write in this draft, and chapter 4 starts that off. So I had it pretty easy with chapters 1 through 3, but now the real work is going to start. Media Attorney, I got a whopping 183 words that time. Hey, it's more than me. Hayden said, moved my bed and desk. Room is feeling cozier. I still need to do dishes, but I also don't want to. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not a big dishes fan myself. I sympathize with you. Piper asked, how long are your chapters? My chapters are anywhere between 2,000 words and 4,000 words usually. Sometimes I have really short chapters because I write in multi-point of view. So I'll have like a piece of information that needs to be told from a specific character. So for example, in my book, only one character has the ability to see ghosts. So if there's like a ghost present in the chapter that is like going to dole out a very important piece of information, that character needs to be the point of view character because she's the only one who can see the ghosts. So sometimes I will like switch to another character and have like a short point of view section that needs to be told from that character and then switch back. And in that case, it's usually like, I'll have a chapter that's maybe 1,000 words long, but nothing shorter than 1,000 words ever for me. And then if I have really long chapters, sometimes they can go up to 6,000 words, but that's pretty, I try to split those up if I can. But yeah, usually pretty typical is between 2,000 and 3,000 words for me. Renee said only 379, more than me. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say only. That's a very, very successful sprint. I say this literally every single time I do one of these because I've been editing and not drafting recently, but it's very hard for me to measure productivity when I'm editing stuff. If you come to my sprints, you will have heard me say this like 10 million times, but it remains to be true. Although I am going to have to be drafting a lot of stuff once I start integrating these new subplots that I've created. I know at least like 2 scenes that were told in another character's point of view that I think I'm going to switch over because they're more like romantic scenes that could be told from either character's point of view. And I think it would be more exciting to readers for it to be told in the other character's point of view. So I'm going to rewrite those in another point of view. So that is also going to be exciting. But there's a lot of stuff that I'll have to write from scratch, which I'm also excited about. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about this book. Piper said, do you have a note of ideas? I have a lot of ideas I would like to turn into books someday. Yeah, I keep a running list of things. So I'll have like a notes, like I write stuff in my notes on my computer, or I will have like a running Word document where I will just like add ideas that I have for books into the Word document and then later, go revisit it if I want to. I don't keep a notebook. I just keep everything digital just because it's easier for me to access it that way. Hayden said, maybe I'll read. I'm almost done with it, Sitting in St. James by Rita Williams Garcia. Awesome. Yeah, reading is very, very cool. I actually like joining other people's writing sprints and reading during them. I think it's fun. It's like a cool little space. It feels kind of like a hangout space to read in. I don't know. I enjoy it. I always feel like if I don't block off a space for reading, that I always end up pushing it off to like do writing or housework or marketing and stuff that is like, I really have to do a little bit more pressingly. I don't think that that's a word. So I need to start carving out some real time to read because I enjoy it so much when I do. I'm the kind of thriller reader that like in the first half of a thriller, I don't really care. I'll read like 5 pages and I'll put it down, or like another 5 pages and I'll put it down, and I'm not really invested. But after I reach about the 50% mark, I can't think about anything else except for how that book is going to end. So I will like carry that book with me everywhere. I will put off other things I have to do because I want to finish that book. So as long as I'm living within the first 50% space of the book, I have a lot more like ability to push it off. But after I reach that halfway mark where I'm really invested, I can't think about anything else. Yeah. So do we want to do another sprint? I mean, maybe we want to take a break because that was like a pretty long sprint. We can, I don't know. I could think, I'm trying to think of ways to entertain you for another like 2 minutes before we do another sprint. I did BuzzFeed games at my book launch party, my live stream that I did to celebrate They Stay's launch. And that ended up being really fun. I really enjoyed that. Like I would put like the link to the quiz in the chat, and then I would put like share my screen for the BuzzFeed quiz, and we would all do the BuzzFeed quiz together and compare our results. I found all these kind of like ghostly themed BuzzFeed quizzes, which I thought were hilarious. So maybe that's something I can do for future sprints. We could do like BuzzFeed quizzes in between sprints to do something completely different than writing. Oh yes, we have a question. Piper asked, do you have any tips on writing villains? I do actually. I think that the most compelling villains are villains that think that they're doing the right thing and are doing something that they can morally justify. I don't like villains like it's a pet peeve of mine in thrillers where you have like the villain who's evil for the sake of being evil, who just has like this evil master plan that they want to do for like no concrete reason, like just to get more power or whatever, without like having a very, very concrete character reason to want to do that thing. I find the stories the most interesting when a villain wants something that the hero doesn't want. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a evil thing, but it's something that the hero thinks is not okay, and that they have like conflicting moral values, and then that's why they clash. It's not like a stereotypical like good versus evil story. I think that your character needs to think that, or your villain needs to think that what they're doing is the right thing to do and are morally justified in doing it. I think that you need to have a villain who feels like an authentic character. I don't think that you should skimp on the characterization of your villain, like just focus on, character monologues, character work, character questionnaires and stuff for your hero, but not for your villain. Even if your villain doesn't get a lot of screen time, because like in thrillers, a lot of the time they're searching for the villain and the villain isn't revealed until the end. Maybe they're in the book, but they're not revealed as the villain until the end. I still think that you need to really understand like what that character is doing, why they're doing it, who they are, what they sound like, what they talk like, and their entire history. Because I think that, that makes your book and villain feel a lot more authentic and real. Yeah, I think that those would be my main tips for writing villains. I might do a video on this actually. This would be fun to film. I'm gonna make a note of that. Hayden said, I had one guy named Jack whose goal was world domination so that he'd never lose anyone or anything unless he wanted to. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, and then you can have like a whole backstory for him about like, things that he's lost or really like tragic things that have happened to him, and like kind of give a justifiable reason for wanting that. Yeah, no, that's a good example. Hi, Maddie. Good morning. Thank you so much for stopping by. We're just about to start another sprint. Yeah, no, thank you. I'm so happy to see you. Do we all want to start another sprint? How did we feel about doing 30 minutes last time? Do we want to do 30 minutes again? I like the 30-minute sprint. I think once we do a 30-minute sprint, we're gonna be at about, like, 2.5 hours, so I think maybe if we do 30 minutes, we should probably, like, say that this is our last sprint and then sprint for longer, or we can do, like, 2 shorter sprints, like, 20 minutes each. Um, I'm kind of feeling the 30-minute sprint, though. Um, Let me know if you disagree. I will set the timer and keep it with our, triumphant sound like it was last time. Um Oh, Hayden said, "Sister, first wife, grandmother, several cousins, a number of wars." Oh, yeah, wow, he did lose a lot. Yeah, poor guy. Jeez. You're brutal to your characters. Alright, so I'll set the timer and share my screen for, one final 30-minute sprint. Happy writing, everybody. I will actually, no, I will share my screen before I say that. I think I can just keep the timer like last time. Yep, because it's already preset. And I will see you all after the sprint. All right. How was that sprint? That sprint was pretty good for me. I'm not done with chapter 4. I still have like quite a bit of work left to do on it before I can move on. I have it's like the big scene right like kind of after the opening where like she has to deal with the legal repercussions of stuff that happened at the end of book 1, which is going to end up being a little bit bigger of a bigger part of the book than I previously anticipated. So I have to rewrite that scene a little bit and have her grapple with like the intensity of what happened at the end of book 1, because in my first draft she kind of glossed over it pretty quickly. So it's going good. I am just kind of right at the point where the detectives are going to arrive. So this will be a good place to start back up editing when I pick this project up again. How was that for all of you, everyone who stuck around for our last sprint? I'm so happy that I was able to see some of you today and that we were all able to get some writing done. This was a good, productive writing session for me, and I hope it was productive for you too. I have another sprint actually happening next week at the same time on Saturday. I am doing like 3 weeks in a row, just spontaneously this December, because I really enjoy doing this. This is really fun. And I also hadn't been creating YouTube videos at the rate that I should be the past couple of weeks, just because I've been on this deadline for writing. So now that I'm going to start releasing more consistently again, hopefully that will be good. But yes, I hope that that was good for all of you. I'm sure that there are other writing sprints happening for the rest of the day. If you want to keep working, my sprints for next week are going to be somewhat holiday themed. So I'm going to have a nice, fun holiday timer and find nice Christmas music sounds or any holiday music sounds for our sprint timer. And yeah, maybe I'll wear a Santa hat. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But thank you all again for coming. I will see you next week if you want to come sprint with me again. Don't forget to like this video if you haven't already. And have a good week. As always, happy writing. Bye, everybody.